Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. If you're joining us, this is the live e-commerce report with me, Mia Lindicke, and my co-host, CEO Steve Orenstein. I've read your article, your opinion piece, Steve. What an interesting perspective, and I think it is so spot on. You were referring to the Australia Post and how they are basically a decade late to this next day delivery. It's something that you at Zoom Technologies and other role players have been doing years before what they're now trying to achieve. Very interesting remarks. Would you like to share with us, how did you come up with all those, analysis?
Yeah, I mean, it's been interesting. I mean, obviously in our Zoom to You business, we've been, providing same day and 3-hour, 1-hour delivery to customers right across Australia. And that's back in 2014. And so customers have evolved since then, wanting faster and faster delivery. And you look at sort of some of these larger e-commerce businesses in Australia, but also globally, and people like Amazon, where that fast delivery is what's allowing their businesses to grow. And so, it's probably a little bit strange and disappointing that Australia Post comes out with, promoting that they're launching this next day service. It's a later cutoff time, and I think that makes sense. But ultimately, customers are wanting faster delivery, and their customers should be expecting to deliver things to their customers faster. And so thinking about same day is where it should be today. And every, e-commerce business, there's a bit of work for them to do in setting up and getting ready to do same day delivery, and that's where they should be focusing their efforts on. It's interesting that as much media attention it got, I don't think it is news. I think it's old news, and I think businesses should be spending their time and effort and focusing on how are they going to get product to their customers faster, because that's ultimately how they're going to grow their business.
Absolutely. Raising that bar. But if you haven't read that article, we're going to post it on the show notes at the end. So please do go and read it. Very interesting points that Steve is making, and share it. Share it as wide as possible as you can. But let's go straight into the wrap of the e-commerce news of the week. I want to stay with Australia news, and this is some big news coming out with one of its biggest supermarkets. It's Coles, and they had these investor briefings, and it was a full year financial report that they released this week. I managed to listen in on that investor briefing, and very interesting that they made a $1.1 billion profit. Now, I know that some of the customers are concerned because, the pressure of the high cost of living these days, and everybody is trying to make, ends meet. They are changing their budgets rapidly. They've also noticed that families and people under the age of 35 are struggling mostly just to get by these days. But interesting is that the e-commerce, in the second half of the year, their e-commerce sales actually grew by $2.8 billion. That is very interesting. Steve, I'm gonna ask you just how does it work, and some phenomenal trend here. But let's listen to a clip of the CEO, Leah Wickett, during this investor briefing earlier this week.
Over the last few months, I've had the chance to listen to many of our customers talk about the challenges they are experiencing with cost of living. We know from our research that our customers are becoming more value conscious, with many worried about their ability to cover costs, particularly young families and those under 34. They are telling us they are reducing spend on things like visits to the hairdresser and beauty services, entertainment and gifts. Eating out, takeaway and coffees from the cafe are increasingly being seen as treats for a special occasion. There is no doubt that there are a number of industry dynamics at play. 3 of the most significant for us are cost price increases from suppliers, driving price inflation for the customer, rising wage costs and loss. Stock loss is at levels that we have not seen for a very long time, increasing in FY23 as a result of elevated levels of organised retail crime and theft, driven by the cost of living pressures our customers are facing.
That sound, of course, courtesy to Open Briefing. Now, Steve, we've heard now again and again, the cost of living, it is increasing. But my question to you, is this a global issue, or is it something that's more specific to Australia? Is it region specific? You've traveled the world, you've seen what's happening lately in other countries. Is it something that's across the board globally?
Yeah, I mean, this is, I guess inflation is happening right across the world. And primarily, I think this has been driven by there was lots of money that was available. People could go and borrow lots of money at very low interest rates. And I think particularly with what's happened throughout COVID, where there was essentially lots of money available, which people could get access to, which has ultimately led for the price of things actually increasing. And so you're seeing that across the board in lots of areas of business, whether it's the cost of hiring a staff, but also the value of the actual products that you're actually purchasing as well. So yeah, I mean, inflation has been happening. I think inflation may be sort of stabilizing, so it'd be interesting to see sort of what does happen. And it's definitely happening in different parts of the world. I know, things like your cost of your coffee in Australia, but also in, the Philippines or in other parts of the world. It's all increasing, but hopefully we're starting to see some things stabilize, and it'll be interesting to see whether, as technology starts to evolve and we start to get more efficiencies by things like AI, and does that start to have some impacts on inflation actually reducing? So yeah, it's definitely interesting times, and the next 10 years I think are going to be particularly interesting to see how technology actually evolves throughout the world and the impacts it has on the world.
I mean, I'm someone who really loves a strong cup of coffee. As a journalist, that's the only thing that keeps you awake. And I mean, you've seen it, how people are cutting down on those luxuries. It's literally a luxury to go and grab a takeaway coffee these days. But something that Coles is now also doing is that they are expanding their shopping experience. And I want to quickly read you what they've done, and they've briefed us on. It said that they now have 35 new home delivery stores. They've upgraded 463 stores with rapid delivery options. And they've got 33 stores now doing same-day delivery. That's a very interesting strategy. Would you say that they are now focusing more on capturing those online shoppers, or what would you say? What is the strategy here? Anything that we can learn from what they're doing that we can replicate for our small and medium enterprises?
Yeah, I think what you're seeing there is they've recognized that delivery is like a really important part of their overall e-commerce strategy. And they're looking at seeing, they've got these retail stores. These retail stores are very close to where their customers are. And so how can they turn those retail stores into being micro warehouses to be able to do dispatch from those stores? And so that, yeah, they're definitely, looking at how they can improve that customer experience. By improving that customer experience, they're hoping that they're going to be able to acquire more customers. And then ultimately that's going to see revenue grow and more profitability inside of their business. And so, yeah, I think, whether you're a small e-commerce business to a large e-commerce business, delivery is how you're going to differentiate yourself. And it's particularly important right now because if you're not doing it, you're going to get left behind.
Absolutely. Coles on-demand delivery service is now also available in 660 stores. I know that they're using DoorDash, and I think it's Uber Eats as well.
Right.
I mean, logistically, how does it work? How do they create this faster delivery with these 600 stores?
Yeah, so I guess there's different types of delivery that they're offering, and they're doing a same-day service, they're doing like a next-day service, and they're also then doing this service through Uber Eats or DoorDash. And I imagine and know that they have different product ranges available in those different service offerings. And so if you're doing a slower service, they're expecting that order is going to be higher in value, a lot more items that are going to be there, and you'll have a lot more choice of the type of products that you can actually order. Whereas if you're ordering from one of these on-demand players, it's going to be a smaller product range, but they'll get an order. It'll be hitting an iPad that's sitting inside of each of their stores. They'll accept the order, and then they'll go and do the pick and pack. And they'll have people doing the pick and pack directly from the retail store as if they were a normal customer, except they'll probably be able to do it much faster because they'll have memorized where all those products are in that supermarket. Once they do that, the driver will turn up, and the driver will be an Uber driver or a DoorDash driver going off and doing that delivery. So it's definitely, it's interesting. It's from what, I've looked at is the only ordering for that rapid service is actually via the Uber Eats app or the DoorDash app. It's not through their own apps. So that's definitely interesting that they've gone down that path.
Yeah. I want to now go into something that you've done, or some research that you've done. You looked at the speed of same day delivery, Woolies versus Coles. And I think that's a very interesting outcome. I'm looking forward to hear what you actually found. You took this deep dive into this comparison. I know you've ordered some items. Tell us more about what the e-commerce, what these two supermarkets, big supermarkets in Australia, and what they are doing in terms of the e-commerce offering. What should we know? Just take us through it.
Yeah, cool. No problems. Well, I'll share my screen and just go into a little bit more sort of detail on it. And let me just bring that up here. I mean, whether you're looking at sort of Woolworths or you're looking at Coles, these are the two largest, supermarkets here in Australia. And, there's, let me just turn this on here. So you should be able to see that now. Perfect.
Yes.
They're two of the largest sort of supermarkets here in Australia. And, one thing I sort of started with and started looking at this presentation and sort of sharing the information is like, what is the size of these two businesses? And that's the market cap. And so this is the value of what these businesses are available on the Australian Stock Exchange. So Woolworths is a much, much larger business. It's more than double in size of the Coles. Coles being $21 billion market cap, and Woolworths being $45 billion market cap. So they're both substantial businesses, and they both had different strategies around how they're acquiring their customers from a digital and online point of view, which is really interesting. When you go to the Coles website and you look at the ordering process when you go through, you first are presented with their click and collect option that you can see here. Click and collect, it's quite a nice thing, but ultimately customers really, they might do the click and collect if the delivery isn't available, but they really want it delivered, I think. So then you've got your option to have the product actually delivered. But on their sort of standard sort of web portal, it's all about for tomorrow. It's all about next day delivery. And this is where you've got their full range of all their products, but nothing is available there. At least from what I did, I could see from a same day point of view. So what they're then going.
Sorry to interrupt you. Is this specifically to certain products, or would you say this could be all over for the entire shop?
Yeah, so this is like you're logging into their website, and this is their full product range from what I can see. I mean, it might be different to what you see in store, but it's quite extensive in terms of what's actually available there. And yeah, so it's not a very small subset. It seems like it's quite large in terms of the subset that's available there. So then you look at, okay, well, how are they doing this rapid delivery service, and how does that work? So you go to Uber Eats, you download the app, and you can select, who you want to have your products delivered from. And so whether you're buying from Coles, you're buying from Woolworths, or you're buying even from IGA. And so the first thing you sort of see here at the top is, here's the delivery time window. And so how quickly from when you order will you actually receive product? And then what is the cost of that delivery? So it is interesting to see what, the differences in time. Both of these stores, Coles and Woolworths in particular, they're very close to our office. They're probably, less than a 10-minute walk in both instances. So they're very close. Delivery should be able to happen really quickly. Coles delivery fee is slightly more expensive, but I wouldn't necessarily take that as they're going to be more expensive, because sometimes their products are actually cheaper or more expensive in both instances.
More value for money, so the product might be actually bigger.
That's right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So what's interesting here is Woolworths have got from what I can see, Woolworths has gone a lot heavier into their digital strategy, and they spent a lot of money and a lot of time in building out a lot of apps. They have apps to be able to order through the App Store from your phone, and I think they've done that really well. They recently acquired Milk Run. As Milk Run, here was that rapid delivery service. They managed to acquire it, and they've rebuilt. Well, they're using the Milk Run app, and it's really good in terms of how it's actually operating there. You can order, have that product delivered in a short period of time. You can click through and see that coming through there. But interestingly, I did a quick comparison in terms of, okay, if I'm going to order from Milkrun or I'm going to order from Uber Eats, is there a pricing difference on the same product? And there is. And so that's where, when you look at the value of the cost of the delivery from a consumer point of view, does it make sense going always with the cheapest? Because sometimes your products are going to be more expensive. And so you can see here that, some oat milk is an example. It was more than $1 cheaper buying it through the Milkrun app. Now, it was on special on that day, so maybe it's not always, but still at their standard price, it was still 60 cents cheaper than ordering through Uber Eats, and basically delivered in the exact same time period. So it's definitely interesting to see that. I then sort of continued a further deep dive, looking at sort of a further comparison. And the one thing I did notice is that, like on the Milkrun app, say with Woolworths, they had a different range of meats that were available versus Uber Eats. They had a smaller subset. And again, their standard, this particular item here, was $9.60, and it was then $8.80 through the Milkrun app. So there was definitely a difference in pricing and pricing strategy that's been happening there and playing out, which is interesting.
Sure. And the thing for me, Steve, is that customers don't have the luxury to go through this extensive research every time. So you're basically going in blind. And I think just shows us again that how important is it. So when you're saving somewhere, you need to make sure that you are not overspending on another item because, for instance, you choose Uber Eats or whatever,
Correct.
You lose out on whatever you achieved on the other price, So I think, in the time where we're living with these tight pressure on economic pressure, it's good for people to actually go through these systems like you've done and see what works best, if they want to get that ultimate best price.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it comes down to, Woolworths has gone down the path of having a multi-brand strategy. They've got a number of different brands, and they're probably experimenting on how they can actually be able to offer those different services and seeing the impacts of moving prices between different platforms. The other thing is, there probably is a larger cost for them in being on Uber Eats or on DoorDash. And so being able to have their own apps, they're able to own the relationship directly with the customer, plug in a delivery network to actually do those deliveries, which I think is definitely important. You can see Coles looks like they're heavily relying on their website, and then they're relying on a third party to actually provide the ordering side of things to have product actually delivered. Coles have been, experimenting and looking at sort of this faster delivery space, I think, for a long time. I know back in 2017, they signed a deal with Airtasker, and that was where an Airtasker could walk into a Coles store and pick up product and have it delivered to the customer. So they've definitely been looking at this. I just don't think that they've been able to execute this as well as what Woolworths has been able to do. Woolworths, have got their own apps, and they've done that across multiple aspects of their business.
Yeah. So would you say that it's better to do it yourself, to create your own apps and eliminate that third party? Would that also then be felt, by the customers?
I think it depends on the type of business that you're running, and there's different things that work for different types of businesses. And I think Uber Eats is a great platform, and Deliveroo is a great platform, and provides a really great way for small businesses to get up and running and be able to be there. And also, it's great for these Woolworths and Coles to be out on those platforms as well. But ultimately, Woolworths and Coles should be trying to own those customers directly and build their own platforms. They'll get customers from a range of those platforms. And so being on all of them makes sense, but definitely having your own infrastructure inside of your business, particularly when you're a medium to large size business, definitely makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I want to now change our focus to small businesses, actually. So we've dealt with the consumer, with the business side. Now I want to share with you some thoughts about the pressure on your small and startups. So I know, for instance, that the Australia Post, they increased their prices not so long ago in July. We reported on it here at Locate to You. You can go to our website and you'll find some extensive articles there. The price increased by 10%. That's quite significant.
Yeah, definitely.
is specifically for parcels weighing 500 grams. Now, I know you would tell me that that would be mostly what the small and startups are dealing with. So they are strictly talking to them. Domestic shipping in Australia is one of the highest in the world when you compare it to the US or the UK. Now, this is pressure, extremely pressure on new startups. I mean, how do you start if you're not even getting a head start? Tell us just how does this pricing system work for parcels, and how do you get around it if you just start up? You just a startup.
Yeah,
Where do you
yeah,
start?
yeah. Oh, look, I mean, I think Australia is a difficult country for delivery because it's such a large, large country, and there's not real density like you see in some, other countries across the world. Obviously, in the metro areas, there is some density, but you compare that to, somewhere like Singapore, where there's huge amounts of density. And so what I mean by density is it's the number of deliveries that are taking place in that short area. And so that's going to be really important for reducing cost of actual deliveries. So if a driver can pick up 100 or 200 shipments in one go and be able to deliver that in a shorter period of time, that's going to mean that cost of delivery is reducing. And so Australia is hard because you've got all these regional areas, and even in the metro areas, they're not hugely dense populations like you see as an example in Singapore, where there's lots of high rises all together, and you've got one driver just turning up to 2 or 3 unit blocks and delivering all the parcels in those particular unit blocks. And so for a startup, an early stage e-commerce business, it's challenging. You're probably going to be using the likes of Australia Post. But there are other options that are available, and I think it's thinking about different carriers or different courier providers based on the type of product that you're sending, and not just necessarily relying on just one. It might be that you're using someone like Couriers Please. It could be using Aramax. It could be using Sendle. There's Toll and TNT, which is now owned by FedEx. There are lots of different options available, and there's also thinking about segmenting your parcel volume to smaller carriers that are available, doing same day by using the likes of Zoom to You, or using DoorDash, or using Uber Eats, or Uber Direct Service. So there's lots of options, and I think it's just not settling on, hey, we just have to use Australia Post. There are lots of competitive options that are out there, and as your business starts to grow, you will be able to get more competitive rates as you're doing more volume. And so targeting your customers and trying to get as many customers in an area like lots in Sydney or lots in Melbourne definitely will help you to be able to get better rates, and definitely speak out to your carriers to say, am I on the best rate structure? What can I do to actually improve my current rate structure? And that might be you need to increase the volume, and then what you need to be able to do to actually see that improvement.
So it all comes down again to research. You need to do proper research before you just get going, and before you just stumble into something that might actually, at the end of the day, cost you a lot more. Let's look at our last story. It's robot taxis. They are now legal in San Francisco. So next time when you are driving around, don't be surprised when you don't see anyone inside. But there are some concerns automatically. Like when you hear that, you're like, is that even possible? And is that safe? Now, San Francisco has made this landmark ruling in favor of robot taxis, and it's extremely popular in the US, in San Francisco. But the ruling was made by this local commission, and this now allows the driver taxis freedom to operate and to accept fares. And unfortunately, these vehicles have been reported to just malfunction. And it's just one of those things. We've all suspected it. It's still in the process of, technology is evolving. But at this moment, it's got problems. So, I mean, what do you make of this story? It's very interesting, scary, but I mean, we are moving into that direction. We are reporting more and more on these kind of stories. Do you think that the delivery space might actually benefit from this kind of technology in the future?
Yeah, look, I think it's it's really interesting to see what's happening there in San Francisco, and ultimately when big shifts in technology take place. You've seen this, over history. It's requiring someone to actually take a leap of faith and say, hey, we're going to push the boundaries here, and we're going to try something that's completely new that everyone's scared of, but someone's actually, courageous enough to actually decide to do that. And I think that's what they're doing. San Francisco, the Bay Area, there is, obviously a very big tech area. And so they're very keen to see these types of things being rolled out. And ultimately, autonomous vehicles is going to actually reduce accidents. It's going to reduce the number of fatalities that we see on the road. The cost of insurance will reduce dramatically. The improvements to everyone's lives will be significantly better by not having to drive. And I think in time, we'll look back and go, oh my God, it was so dangerous when we were actually driving ourselves. Like, how crazy as it was that we were relying on this person to concentrate for that entire period while they were driving. And, so it's definitely going to be safer. But there's going to be some stumbling blocks as that technology evolves. And they had an accident recently. I think they crashed into like a fire truck or something along those lines. These things are all going to be learning experiences, and they're going to get better and better. What these vehicles will have inside of them is they're capturing huge amounts of data, and that data is going to be then used to then build their engines, just figuring out how they should be doing things. And so the more road time they actually get, the better. And as they do that more and more often, then they're going to improve and be able to deal with circumstances that the system probably wasn't really equipped to deal with. And so I think there's probably going to be more accidents. Hopefully, not too many people are going to be impacted by that. But I mean, today, every single day, there are car accidents. There's probably people that are really badly injured by car accidents. So this isn't something new. This has been happening. It's just that it feels scary because it's not being driven by a human, and we've got someone now to blame. Today, when an accident happens, we're like, well, it was an accident. Like, someone lost concentration and that happened. Whereas now we've got a robot or a company to blame for that happening. And so, yeah, I think ultimately it will result in less accidents that are going to occur in the future.
Absolutely. I mean, I just read an article about an accident in Australia with a delivery man. So, I mean, these things happen even if it is operated by a human.
That's right.
So I think we are in a territory where technology, artificial intelligence, it is moving at a rapid pace.
Yeah.
And sometimes communities are just feeling that it's getting too much. But just like in the old days where we still can't believe that children were allowed to be in a car without a safety belt, without a safety. I mean, it's astonishing to look back at what our parents and grandparents were allowed to do. And I think at the end of the day, a few years from now, our children might be looking back and seeing what we're doing, and it would be just surprising to them.
Yeah,
because technology is moving.
Definitely, and I think there's a good chance that there's at some point in time there'll be a generation that basically stops learning how to drive. They won't need to learn how to drive into the future.
Yeah. Well, thank you. As we wrap up our e-commerce report, I just want to go to one question that we actually couldn't finish last time because of the time. And this question was from Alexander. And he was saying, hi, Steve, I love the stream as well. I wonder how crowdsourcing solutions are tracking at the moment. What is the niche you would disrupt more?
I mean, I think when I think about sort of the crowdsourcing and, people talk about the gig economy, ultimately it's around fast delivery. And I think there was a period of time where, there was a lot of hype around like ultra fast delivery, 15-minute delivery, and that just was never going to be sustainable. And so I think that's gone. I think now what it is how do we get faster delivery? How do retailers leverage the ability to connect with companies that can provide them with faster delivery? And I think that's what we're seeing right now. When I look at the likes of Amazon and what they're doing now in Australia and also globally, I mean, they're the benchmark that every other retailer should be trying to beat. But I think most of them are just trying to catch up and playing catch up for a long time. And so they're investing huge amounts in logistics, both thinking about like air logistics as well as on the ground and building out their last mile in terms of having their own fleet of drivers being able to deliver product, and so they're not relying on a third party. And that's definitely something that small and large businesses can start thinking about: is can they run their own fleet, and do they have the tools to be able to do that? And there's tools available in Locate to You, or can you use something like Zoom to You or Uber Eats or DoorDash to be able to get that fast delivery to your customer. And you definitely need to be doing that. There is, I think, a bit of work that businesses have to do in terms of thinking about how do they operationally take advantage of doing same day delivery. It's doing the pick and pack and getting that product ready. But that definitely should be part of a retailer's and e-commerce's business strategy today.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much. I hope that answers your question, Alexander. Thank you so much again. Any last remarks from your side as we wrap up this week?
It's been an interesting week, and I think if people are wanting to keep up to date on what's happening in the e-commerce space and delivery space, we're writing a lot of content. You can go to locateyou.com/news, and we'll keep you updated on what's happening.
Great. And I will share with you this link of the opinion piece of Steve. Please do go and read it. I think that is it from our side. So yes, same time, same place next week. We'll chat more about what's happening in the e-commerce space.
Perfect. Thanks, Mia.
Thanks.